let's get to Elon Musk, and then we'll do some questions afterwards. Stop screen share unless... So the story of the week, and it's taking twists and turns. Elon Musk acquires a 9.2% shareholding interest, common voting shares, in Twitter. Price rockets. This will be a material fact coming to a lawsuit that has since been initiated, or at least filed, awaiting class certification. The other story that became the big story. Elon Musk was offered a position on the board of directors by Parag. I don't know his last name. No disrespect intended. Big shocking stuff. Elon's going to be on the board of directors. I did, some 30,000 foot overviews of shareholding, what that means, being a director, what that means. It's only to understand. It's not to say you have a law degree. Those were the big stories. Then Elon declines the offer to be a director of the company. And through SEC filings, it becomes known that Elon has made an offer to acquire all of the outstanding shares of the company and take it private. Big news. He's going to buy all the shares. I think it was for $61 billion or $43 billion, tens of billions of dollars, and take it private, because he says in the filing, which I went over, was it yesterday already or the day before? I'm not going to be able to affect the change I thought I was going to be able to affect as a shareholder. I don't think it can be done with the current administration. I believe that to affect the change I wanted to affect as a shareholder, which I think now I won't be able to do, I need to acquire the company. Thus, as required by law, I am stating my intention to acquire the company through, I think it was an all-cash acquisition, subject to terms. The Saudi prince, who owns a substantial portion as well of the shares of the company, said not enough money. And that was the big story of the week. Then the bigger story was that, I think it's the bigger story, is that Elon Musk is getting sued because apparently he failed, neglected, as the lawsuit alleges, willingly did not disclose as required by the SEC to publicly disclose once he had acquired 5% shareholding of the company. And you may remember this threshold. This is not, I don't know where this is from, but it's just, basic corporate law stuffs. I briefly explained that Securities and Exchange Commission, it imposes certain disclosure obligations depending on your shareholding portion. Once you reach 5%, you have to, file certain filings. Once you reach 10%, you're deemed, I think, not to be an insider, but you have to file additional filings. There's additional restrictions on the type of transactions you can engage in. And so that's why I said, Elon stayed deliberately under the 10%, but he exceeded the 5%. One of the filings, it seems that he failed to file, which was the disclosure of having acquired 5% or more common shares in the company. This is from Investment Fund Law Blog. Take it for what it's worth, and I know nothing about it. Acquiring more than 5% of a publicly traded company, Section 13D of the 1934 Act and Regulation 13D thereunder require beneficial owners of more than 5% of a class of equity securities of a publicly traded company to file a report with the SEC. For purposes of calculating the percentage of the shares held, a fund manager will generally be deemed the beneficial owner of the shares held by its clients, as well as any shares held by its proprietary account. Yada, yada, yada. So we don't need to get into it because it's boring. It's boring garbage. But there were thresholds to meet. Apparently, he didn't meet the threshold. Why might this be important? Well, if Elon Musk had disclosed that he had acquired 5% of the shares of the company, what do you think it would have done to the price of the shares? What do you think it would have done for faith in the company for people who currently held shares? Hypothetically, if you were to own shares in Twitter and you find out that Elon Musk owns 5% of the company, would you feel better or worse about your investment? Do you think that your investment would go up or down based on that information? It's an obvious answer, because the whole reason why it was shocking, encouraging, if you were on the left side of the aisle, terrifying that an individual billionaire acquired such a large portion of a public company. It was big news precisely because of the amount of the shareholding that Elon Musk acquired. So shocking between 9.1%, the more important. So the more the shareholding, the more important the news, because of the more of the influence it gives the shareholder. So what's true at 9.2%, let's just say it's half as true, but nonetheless true at 5%. So if you were holding the shares when Elon Musk, as a matter of fact, in fact, held 5% but didn't disclose it, but you didn't know that, and you sold it, would you have sold it had you known that? Probably not. You might have actually bought more. So there's a class action lawsuit that's been filed on the basis that I know I have it. Anyways, I'll just pull up an article from Reuters first so we can get the 10,000 foot overview, and then we'll skim through the lawsuit itself. Let me just see if there's anything relevant in the chat that's going to help. 43. Okay. So the article is Elon Musk is sued by shareholders over delay in disclosing Twitter stake. And by the way, I'm not faulting. I'm not saying this is malicious or whatever. I actually think there's probably going to be a lot of robust defenses because presumably Elon Musk is buying this through brokers, through institutions, through professionals who are supposed to be keeping track of these things. And therefore, there might be some professional reliance defenses that Elon Musk will be able to avail himself to. This is from Reuters. Elon Musk was sued on Tuesday by former Twitter Inc. shareholders, because they sold their shares, who claim they missed out on the recent run-up in its stock price because he waited too long to disclose his 9.2% stake interest in the company. In the proposed class action filed in Manhattan federal court, I wonder if is Manhattan the Southern District? We'll see. The shareholder said Musk, the chief executive of Tesla, made, quote, materially false and misleading statements and omissions by failing to reveal he had invested in Twitter. By failing to reveal he had invested in Twitter by March 24 as required under federal law. So this is the damages. The price went up. What happened? Twitter shares rose 20% on April 4 when he publicly announced it from 249 from 39 after Musk disclosed his stake, which investors viewed as a vote of confidence from the world's richest person. Okay, the lawsuit seeks unspecified damages. I actually reached out to the law firm. I found their public statement or their publication. What's it called when you publish the thing that notifies the people? Press release. Their press release. Let's just briefly skim through the lawsuit. There it is. Someone told me how to do this yesterday. Click on that to get rid of it. Good. I'm going to make it big. That's not big. That's too big. Okay, here we go. United States. So this is Southern District. So it's the Southern District of New York. United States District Court, Southern District of New York. Mark Bain Rosella, individually and on behalf of all others similarly situated, plaintiff versus Elon R. Musk. Plaintiff Mark, I won't highlight it. Plaintiff Mark Rosella, by and through his attorneys, alleges upon personal knowledge as to his own acts and upon information and belief as to all other matters, based upon the investigation conducted by and through his attorneys, which included, among other things, a review of documents filed by defendant Elon Musk with the United States Securities and Exchange Commission, news reports and other public available. Okay, fine, whatever. Let's just get to some important stuff. So they're saying, pursuant to the rules, what he was required to do, Musk was required to file a Schedule 13 with SEC within 10 days of passing 5%. So here's the interesting, it's going to be within 10 days of passing 5%. In law, or for anyone who's done this, there is a clearing period where you own the shares, but you can't, where you buy the shares and then the transaction itself has to close. So is the 10 days starting from the close of the purchase or from the date of the purchase? I don't know. Questions I would ask, but I presume that this law firm is not filing, a lawsuit that can be defeated quite so easily on technicalities. So let's just take for granted he failed to file within the time frame. I don't know if there's a grace period because he had to file it apparently by March 24, and he didn't declare it until April 4. So that's what, 2 weeks, give or take, a little under 2 weeks, 10 days. When Musk finally filed the required Schedule 13, thereby revealing his ownership stake in Twitter, the company's shares rose from a closing price of $39 on April 1 to $49 per share on April 4, an increase of approximately 27%. So that's it. They jurisdiction and venue. Parties, it doesn't matter. Substantive allegations. Let's just get to... Oh, well, it's interesting. why he might have delayed notifying. This is where, it could get a little sketchy for Musk, because in as much as it would be predictable that once he declares that he owns 5% of the company, the price goes up. Well, if he wants to acquire up to 9.1% after that, his price to do so goes up. Whether or not that would be the determinant factor for Elon, who's worth however many billions of dollars, what would have been the net difference on his purchase? I think it ends up being 150 million by the lawsuit. Investors who sold their shares of Twitter stock between March 24, when Musk should have disclosed his Twitter ownership, and before the actual April 4, 2022 disclosure, missed the resulting share price increase as the market reacted to Musk's purchases and were damaged thereby. Musk was motivated to delay his Schedule 13 filing. By failing to disclose his ownership in the stake, Musk was able to acquire shares of Twitter less expensively during the class period. That's a very legitimate point. He was able to acquire the 5 to 9.1% of the shares without it taking the predictable bounce that it took when he announced that he had acquired 9%, which presumably would have happened at 5%. So he was able to buy those additional, as many shares as he already had, at what was an artificially reduced price, because it hadn't factored into the market price knowledge that Elon Musk was a shareholder of 5% or more. It's interesting. So that's it. Class allegations hasn't been certified yet, but the class, you have to define a class. They have to be similarly situated, compensate, same cause of action, same cause, same basic form of compensation, same facts, yada, yada, yada. What do we have here? Fraud on the market. Sounds like a good song. Fraud on the market. Plaintiff will rely on the presumption of reliance established by the fraud on the market doctrine that, among other things, I have no idea what this means, people, defendant made public misrepresentations or failed to disclose material facts during the class period. The omissions and misrepresentations were material. Twitter's securities traded in efficient markets. The misrepresentations alleged herein would tend to induce a reasonable investor to misjudge the value of the Twitter's securities, and plaintiff and other members of the class sold Twitter securities between the time defendant misrepresented or failed to disclose material facts and the time that the true facts were disclosed without knowledge of the misrepresented or omitted facts. And that's it. So it's interesting. Oh, scienter allegations. Another thing that I don't know what it means because I've never heard this concept in law, but as alleged herein, defendant acted with scienter or scienter or sciente. Since defendant Musk knew or recklessly disregarded that he had an obligation to file a Schedule 13 GD to disclose his ownership stakes in Twitter. Furthermore, defendant saved approximately $143 million on his Twitter purchase by delaying the filing of the required shareholder GD and purchasing additional shares at deflated prices. So I don't know what scienter allegations means, but I guess that's it, that he knew or acted recklessly and therefore is guilty. It's interesting. It's an interesting lawsuit. And it's not, I have nothing against Elon. I actually am inclined to have something for Elon because I like, in as much as Robert in his hush-hush, rightly noted certain, call them outlandish projects that did not come to fruition. One of, he offered a submarine to go in the cave in Thailand to rescue the kids. My understanding now, it was a totally, what's the word? Not unattainable. It was a totally impossible concept, given what the nature of that cave that the kids went into. You couldn't fit a rigid piece of metal very far into it. It needed malleable human bodies to get there. Elon may or may not have known that, but thinking outside the box, being ready to help when you can fault him for not being able to accomplish the goal, but not for the intent to do it, unless you just see it as exploiting of tragedy for marketing purposes. And those are two very legitimate ways of viewing a lot of Elon's behavior. Some people say it as the dreamer thinking outside the box, and others will look at it as an opportunistic bullshitter who's exploiting a tragedy to gain prominence in the public eye for material benefit for existing projects. How you choose to see it is up to you, but those are the two ways of viewing it, and any variation in between. I'll get back to that after the subject. I'm flagging it. I'm not flagging it. I'm starring it. So that's it. It's a legitimate lawsuit. Barnes and I will talk about it on Sunday. You will accuse Barnes. You know where he's coming from, so you might accuse Barnes of bias in the way he views it, but he will explain to us what the scienter theory is. He will explain to us if the reliance defense is going to be legitimate in this case, and other nuances. You have to disclose within 10% of reaching 5%. Does that include any grace period? Does that include what's the word when the transaction becomes formalized? You sell shares in a company, you can't just take that money out of your account. You got to wait. Clearance. Does that include any clearance delays? So if you've acquired the shares on a day, but they only clear formally 3 or 4 days later, does the delay run from the clearance or from the acquisition? We'll see. I don't know. Just those are the questions I would ask offhand. And there might be questions that I don't even know to ask, like one of the 4 children of Passover, because I have so little knowledge or professional experience in this domain that I don't even know that there are certain questions that someone who has more knowledge would know to ask. Oh, a scienter is a person acting with mens rea. Okay, fine. So mens rea is the intent to have committed the act. Actus reus is the illegal act itself. So in criminal law, you have to commit the unlawful act or the act which is illegal, and you have to have had the intent, the mens rea, to not commit an unlawful act, but to commit the act which is unlawful. So you don't have to have had the mens rea to break the law. You just had to have had the mens rea to commit the act which is illegal. So scienter is another way of saying it. Good. Thank you very much, STFU FFS. And for those of you who don't know what that means, cannot be said right now. We have children in the room next to us. Elon Musk is smarter than these trying to sue him. There's no question he's smart. There's no question, Doug Murray. I mean, and I think he's delivered on some things which he's entitled to take a great deal of credit for. And one thing I can tell you about business, about entrepreneurs, they will fail more often than they won't. There's a reason why entrepreneurs have lawyers. And let me rephrase it. There's a reason why entrepreneurs are the clients to lawyers. There's a reason why they are the ones with sufficient money to hire lawyers, because they take their risks, they take their chances, they go bankrupt 9 times before they strike gold on the 10th. You might, to the extent they do it legit and don't defraud investors based on false promises with which they use to line their own pockets with executive salaries and whatever. If they operate legit and they make legit efforts, but nonetheless fail, that's what makes a successful entrepreneur successful, is failing to the point of succeeding. Which waters was Will Wheaton winding when we were wearing watches? Was weird. Which watch was Will Wheaton winding when we were wearing watches? Was weird. I got it. Thank you, Ponton. And thank you, Ron J. I like being told I ask good questions. I don't know which one it was, but I know there were a couple of good ones in there. Big love, Viva. Just having a fun Friday. Have a great weekend. You too. I don't know if you say happy Easter, but have a meaningful Easter, because it is not. It's supposed to be a happy time. I think it's supposed to be a reflective time. Meaningful Easter to everyone celebrating it. Good Friday. Have a meaningful Good Friday. Viva Fry. The key is to waste other people's money to get personal favors and political influence. That, unfortunately, is a reality all too often. And, not being responsible with the money that you've raised from shareholder and investors. Stupid prosecutors love destroying smart people. Well, it's what they get paid to do. I mean, the SEC, hey, they will fight to your last taxpayer dollar to go after, the Elon Musk, but not necessarily the really bad players in the industries. What was it? The Clinton campaign got fined $8,000. Yeah. So that's the Elon Musk lawsuit to be discussed. Let me actually just get one thing. What was our poll doing? How do I see the poll here? A lot of typos. Does is qualify as extortion? Yes, and turtlers. No, and turtles. 82% to 18 say yes. I wanted to see the news about the Prince Waleed. The Prince Waleed, let him say no. Let him be the director that shuts this down. He'll open himself up to a class action lawsuit, because if they don't accept the offer to go private at $54 a share, and then the shares go down after Elon sells his shares, all part of the game as far as I'm concerned. Prince Waleed. Is it Prince Waleed? I think it was. Twitter. What's Al Waleed? Reuters. In as much as we can trust it, Let's see what they say. If the directors refuse the offer, and Elon does what he said he was going to do in his SEC filing, it's not a threat. Just might have to sell all my 9% shares. Yeah, sure. Good luck. Going out. He saved 150 million by buying them without disclosing that he had attained the 5% threshold. He'll lose a ton when he sells his 9.1%. And maybe wash his hands of those accusations, but he'll stand to lose money if he dumps his shares because they refuse this offer, as will all the other shareholders. Did I just shut down my own stream? Wow. Sorry. I had a mild panic attack because I thought I shut down the stream. Saudi Prince Al-Walid bin Talal rejects Elon Musk's Twitter takeover. First of all, who's he to reject it? Saudi Arabian investor Prince Al-Walid bin Talal said on Thursday that as one of the major shareholders in Twitter, he rejects. So, by the way, he can't reject it on his own. He says maybe he personally does not agree with it. He would have to abide by any decision unless he wants to take it over. Make a better offer, Prince Al-Walid. He rejected the takeover bid by billionaire entrepreneur Musk. I don't believe that the proposed offer by Musk comes close to the intrinsic value of Twitter, given its growth prospects, the Prince said in a Twitter post. And by the way, that's the argument. For them to refuse the offer, say, no, it's worth, this company in 5 years is worth more than $54 a share. So that's the shareholder value. Hold on to it, because in 5 years, if you think this company survives 5 years, the intrinsic value. All right, that's one way of looking at it. How about the current value? Current value is less than the offered value. So you got the current value, the offered value, the intrinsic potential value, which is necessarily, undetermined. Musk took aim with a $43 billion takeover, yada, yada, yada. Okay. That's the extent of the article. So let's summarize it. One of the shareholders doesn't want it because he wants more money for his shares. Okay. That's, it's not anywhere near worth the, what is the intrinsic value, Prince Talal? What do you think the intrinsic value of Twitter is? I think it's zero. I think the intrinsic value of this company, the way it's currently being run, is zero. I don't care that Elon bought 10%. I believe this company is worth nothing. I would not invest in it even when it was cheap. Of course, I said the same thing about Facebook. Ooh, look at this. Look at this. This is the first of the greasy curls. Look at this, guys. Yeah, that's the one curl that has just attained a level of grease, like a balloon with helium that's just starting to sag. Let's get that up there. So yeah, that's it. It's one shareholder who owns 12. I think he owns 12%. He says, I don't think it's enough. Okay, you're entitled to your opinion. Directors are going to vote. And if the directors turn down an offer and the stock tanks, I argued the day before yesterday, Elon has structured this in a way, having acquired a material shareholding, material enough to affect the price. If they say no and he sells, well, not only do they not get their 54.20 for the shares, he will trigger some stop losses and he will cause that price to go down even more. So you're going from a 54 to maybe even a pre-Elon purchase low. It'll go, if Elon sells his 10%, his 9.1%, it'll go lower than what it was before Elon started buying it up at 39. Because now people have no faith. They have no hope in the future of the company. So